I'm Aryeh Schwartz, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. The season is here. They said we wouldn't be here. They said it would never work. It's episode 452. No, I'm joking. It's even bigger than that. It's season 30 of the WNBA. Let's dive right in. Before we get into today's show, just a quick reminder, Winsidr is a fully independent WNBA coverage website with everything we do supported by listeners like you. If you enjoy what we do, you can keep it going by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Winsidr. That's patreon.com/Winsidr. With pricing levels for everyone, you're directly showing support for the hard work we do covering the W year round. We also have a full team doing amazing written coverage over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com, plus more content than ever across TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you're in the market for WNBA gear, check the affiliate links in the show notes on winsidr.com. You get to rep the league, and Winsidr gets a little support along the way. Welcome back to the show. Excited to be here. My guy's Mitchell is back.
How you doing? Good. It's season 30, opening week. Life is good. It's time to get this thing rolling.
It's insane. Okay. We were just talking about this. The craziest, less than a month ago?
Yeah.
Just a month ago, we had I don't even know. It's been a whirlwind. We had free agency, we had signings, we had expansion draft, we had college draft. We are in the current midst of roster cuts, breaking news, not by the time this podcast comes out, but as of today, as we're recording, Natasha Cloud, no longer blackballed in the league. No, I'm joking. Is signed by the Chicago Sky. We will discuss that more. Very confused from a roster structure, roster move perspective. But without further ado, it's WNBA 30. So let's dive right in. Mitchell, who are your season favorites to win the championship?
You got to start with Vegas. They didn't just, return most of the roster. They absolutely returned their entire roster, which I don't know how they can make that work, but they do. But yeah, Las Vegas is the top of the list for me. New York is going to be really tough this year too. Assuming they can stay healthy. With Sabally, adding her to the mix, I think that's going to be a huge addition for them. It'll be just a matter of how their depth looks, and how they can, turn the page too from Sandy Brondello being gone. How much of a role either way did she play in the success or the shortcomings of the Liberty? I'm also really curious to see what Indiana can do this year. That's a team everyone's gonna be watching them obviously for Caitlin Clark, but last year they made a run and they were very depleted injury wise. They were injured, or they had a very injury heavy team roster, whatever you want to call it, the entire year basically. So I'm really curious to see if they can stay healthy, and B, what they can do. I'm really intrigued by them. I think to me they're easily a top 4 team and a team that could make a push, not only to the WNBA finals but potentially to a title. But they're still young enough too where they have a few years here where we can see them, make a run, not just like what they did last year, but what potentially we see this year. But those 3, I would say, are my favorites. You could throw Atlanta in there too, as far as a top team. But I still think it starts with Las Vegas and New York, like we've seen in the past, and I think everybody else is just kind of below that. I'm also really curious to see what Dallas can do this year. They obviously added, for a team that I cover the Lynx, they added 2 front court players with Jess Shepard and Alana Smith. I'm very curious to see what they do this year and how maybe they take a step up or maybe they don't. But if they do take a step up, this team, Dallas, could be very dangerous. Paige Beckers looks like she put on a ton of muscle. This offseason, you can tell she put in a lot of work. And I'm curious to see what they can finally do, and if they can take that next step this year. But to me, that's where I start. And then, like I said, everybody else is just kind of below that to me right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. Aces. And like for me, I break it down as simple as this. Like New York and Vegas, the big question is nothing other than health.
Yeah.
If they stay healthy, we're talking about they're the two favorite teams. You expect them to go all the way. It would be shocking to not. Obviously, only one team can go all the way, but you get what I'm saying. Then we can talk about the other teams and kind of where they are. Again, for me, Indiana, and like I guess I'll break it down like this. Like I have my playoff teams, the bubble teams, and then the lottery teams. I have Vegas, New York, Atlanta, Dallas, Minnesota, Phoenix, Indiana, not in a specific order, just those teams. I would be surprised if they don't make the playoffs. With Indiana, I have so little value of last season other than the play, because so many of the players who were instrumental in that deep playoff run are not on the team anymore or got hurt in the middle of it. I like the roster. I'm excited for what they can do. You see Caitlin Clark growing. You see players, Aaliyah Boston growing, players around her growing. I'm excited for what that possibility is, but I tie it less to like what happened last year. I kind of have them in a similar boat to Atlanta, where I want to see what that growth is. What's that next step? For Atlanta, it's all about Ryan Howard for me. Yeah. Can she take that next step? And if so, and I'm totally with you on Dallas. Like Dallas is an intriguing roster. Dallas could be really fun. How are they going to make up for like, realistically 5 to 15 empty possessions because Enrique is throwing up Enrique plays? And, is Enrique going to buy in, give a little bit less selflessness or give up selfishness, whatever you want to say, to make this team better? Because like when I look at Dallas, I'm like, there's only one ball. There's only so many minutes. And then Phoenix, Alyssa Thomas, they're making the playoffs. Oh, yeah. Minnesota's super interesting. I'm sure we could dive in forever. I'm curious for you when it comes to like the bubble teams versus not in the playoff teams, the lottery teams. For me, the bubble teams are LA, Golden State, and DC. DC, I could see shocking some people. They've got a young roster, but a talented roster, a roster that seems like they're having fun, but also is not going to be intimidated by the big lights or being the young roster. So I think that's kind of exciting. I don't expect them to make the playoffs, but I think they'll like be in the hunt for a good period of time. Golden State, I kind of expect a sophomore slump, but we'll see. And with all their front office stuff that's been going on recently, not lots of confidence. I'm blanking on who I saw somebody say something like, with expansion teams, you need to set the culture and the system and everything, but then you have to start attracting free agents, and they set the culture and they set the base, but now they're fumbling big time on that next step, which is bringing the players over. LA, talented roster, but like I don't know, you were kind of agreeing with me before. There's something off.
Yeah, I don't think, on paper, they look like they'd be a good team. We've
seen that
know.
in LA before, haven't we?
Yes, we have. We definitely have. I don't know. I'm not buying them fully yet. It could change. It could definitely change. But I was just, since we're talking about this, I looked up the betting odds at DraftKings on the favorite to win the WNBA title. This is obviously as of the recording of this podcast. But
by the way, we are not sponsored by DraftKings, just to be clear. But if anybody works for them and wants to get us sponsored where we don't have to get people to sign up and all that jazz, cool. Yeah. Go. All right, go.
Soon enough, it'll be legal to do it in Minnesota, but we'll talk about that on another podcast. But New York is favorites plus 220. Then it's Vegas at plus 390. Indiana plus 450, which I was kind of close or surprised that those two are that close. And then next it's Atlanta. So the top four, as we had talked about. The next team kind of surprises me. It's Minnesota at plus 800. Wow. So they're fifth in the rankings. Then it's LA, Phoenix, Dallas. So it kind of drops off quite a bit after that. But that kind of surprised me a little bit that DraftKings is that high. I'm not saying the links will be bad by any means, but I didn't think they'd be the fifth best odds to win the title.
So that surprised me. We'll get into this in a moment. We'll get into Minnesota in a moment because they're my next topic. But lottery teams, I have Chicago, Seattle, Portland, Toronto, Connecticut. I'll say this. For me, Connecticut's a lock in the lottery. which is a shame given their history, given everything they've been through, and it being the sun setting in Connecticut. Toronto and Seattle, I have an asterisk next to Chicago. We can get into that whole thing. I think we'll talk about them in a little bit. But Seattle and Toronto, I have an asterisk because on the one hand, Seattle, I feel like I'm very confused what's going on there with the roster build. Not like love what they got in the front court going. I see them doing some great work in the draft, but then it's kind of like, wait, that was your free agency? I'm kind of confused by that. What are you doing? That said, I think there's going to be some players with some big opportunity. And when you have Awa, who obviously is going to need to grow, but when you have Ezzy back from injury, when you have Dom,
they're going to be a force in the paint.
And you have like a capable scoring guard in Flage, who I think we're going to talk about has a big opportunity to make some noise. And then Toronto is a team where like it doesn't feel like an expansion roster. It almost feels more like not like a Connecticut. It feels like a roster that's like a team that's going through some transition, but it doesn't feel like an expansion roster. You have a vet coach. You bring in a lot of veteran players. Yes, you have some young talent. You have some overseas talent, but it has that feel for me of they're not trying to be champions. They're not trying, to blow the barn door off, but they're trying to make the playoffs. They're trying to establish something. And they've kind of put together a roster of I don't know. It's kind of like not an Avengers in the sense of like the best of the best, but an Avengers of like a group of like different players who have been around the block for a while in various different situations and now are coming together to try and put something together and have a team force. I don't know. What are your thoughts on those lottery teams? Am I off? Am I on?
No, I agree with you. We kind of talked when talking about the two expansion teams. I know we talked about that before we started recording, that it feels like Toronto is poised for a Golden State type of season in their first year. And I think I do agree that I think Portland's going to, have a tough year. But if I had to rank those two, I would obviously say Toronto, then Portland. That said, Toronto will still, they're not going to be, let's be honest, they're not going to be pushing, anything serious in the playoffs if they make the playoffs. It's kind of like Golden State, maybe a first round exit if you do reach the playoffs. So I'd say that's kind of the ceiling for Toronto. When it comes to, Connecticut's gonna have a tough year. But when it comes to Seattle, I do agree with you that they're I don't know. I don't really know what to expect with them. I could see them struggling and I could see them being all right. And that being, or for the reason for that is kind of like what you were talking about with, you have a lot of players that are trying to prove themselves or are getting expanded roles this year. And when you have that, you could be surprised. Look at Natisha Heidemann, for example, who was in a backup role in Minnesota, and now she gets basically a starting job in Seattle. She could end up having a solid summer this summer. Flauja Johnson, I don't know what we're going to end up seeing out of her or what her role will be or how much we will see of her, but I think she'll have plenty of opportunity to make an impact right away. And then I cannot wait to see the trio of towers that they have inside the paint and how that's all going to work out, because how the hell are you going to guard that? And that, you can see where they're going. I don't know if it'll come together this year, but you can definitely see where they're going. You can see definite potential with them. I don't know. I'm intrigued to see how things look. It'll be, I think, a slow start. But I do think that they'll be okay by the end of the season. Whether that results in a playoff appearance, I'm not sure. But.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. Okay. Surprise team that people are not talking about enough. I'm going to go really, really hometown bias on this. Obviously, it's you and I on the pod. There's going to be some Minnesota bias on this. But I do because here's the thing. Everybody's talking about New York. Everyone's talking about Vegas. Mm-hmm. Atlanta has been getting a nice amount of chatter. I think maybe you could argue, honestly, Atlanta's not getting enough talk. Caitlin Clark's obviously getting a ton of attention. So Indiana's getting a ton of attention. Paige and what's going on in Dallas, taking so much from Minnesota, is getting a ton of attention. Heck, Chicago's even getting attention. Most of it not the most positive. But and then Phoenix, Alyssa Thomas, obviously always getting attention in the Phoenix Mercury, always finding a way to stay in the headlines. So I kind of look around the league and I'm like, oh, those are all of the playoff teams that we just talked about. What teams are we not talking about that I feel like could make some noise in the playoffs and are like, here's the thing. Minnesota has done a sneakily good job. I'm going to very biasly give a lot of love to Rachel Galligan and just give all positive things that ever happened to the Minnesota Lynx this past offseason solely to her and to no, I'm joking. But what they have done, I mean, you have Kosu coming off a career year back down in Russia. We have a injured Dorka coming off of the youngest EuroLeague MVP season ever. Prime for a superstar breakout. You now are supposedly it's going to be beneficial, even though we've been told for the past 2 years the greatest thing ever is that Courtney Williams is now the point guard, lead guard. Now we're moving her off, and that's the best thing ever. Fee eventually comes back from injury. You have like everybody I heard at camp was just going crazy over Aliska Hamzova. Emma Chikova was blowing it up in the preseason game, just blowing people's minds at what she's doing at the age of 21. What else am I missing? Nia Coffey, I think, is like, Nia Coffey, I feel like is actually an amazing addition to this roster. That is a Cheryl Reeve type player. Natasha Howard coming back looked a little rusty, but you can see how that energy and that speed and that length is really going to do a lot. There's just a lot of size. You have AD, you got if Saylor can make the roster. Also, everyone's going crazy over the developmental spot over there for Hoff. Minnesota has depth, they have versatility, they have size. Yes, it's going to be rough in the beginning. But like, let's talk about it from this perspective. Let's say in a month and a half, so a month and a half into the season, which is what, like almost half or quarter of about halfway in.
Yeah, about halfway.
You get a fully healthy Nafisa Collier. You have a fully healthy Dorka Juhas. And if the rest of the team stays healthy, like I don't necessarily trust them with Olivia Miles as the point guard to win a championship in her rookie year. I'm just going to be blunt about that. I still have lots of concerns about Olivia Miles in her ability to gather bulk scoring in games when it's needed for this team. I also have major concerns on the defensive end, but you have depth for that. And Cheryl Reeve has done a great job of using point guards that maybe have defensive weaknesses in recent years and covering for them and still having really good defensive teams. I've ranted long enough. Please talk.
Well, starting with Olivia Miles, I do think, we did see throughout the preseason of her starting at the starting point guard spot and then Courtney Williams sliding over, like you mentioned. I do think that once we get into the season, that is going to shift. And that being, well, there's a couple reasons, but I do think that they're going to be cautious with her right away and not just throwing her in at starting point guard and here we go kind of thing. Right now, I say that, and I could see, let's say, her starting technically at point guard, but not playing starter minutes at point guard. And the reason I think that is right away, at least, is you have to make an adjustment for Nafisa Collier. They're going to end up going a little bit smaller as a result. I mean, it's not that much smaller, but a little bit smaller. When Fee comes back, you can slide her into even the 3 if you wanted to. Start Dorka Juhas and then start Natasha Howard. And then also having K-Mac and Courtney Williams starting at the starting point guard spot. But I do think they'll be okay, and I do think we'll see Nafisa Collier early June. And if all things considered, if that happens, it's less than a month without Nafisa Collier. That's manageable. If she misses, let's say 10 games, that's not the end of the world. If the Lynx go 5-5 in that stretch, that's fine. But I do think the hesitation with a lot of people, and we were just looking at the rankings right before this, and ESPN has them at 8th, which I don't know. I kind of go back and forth. If that's too high or too low. It's maybe just right. But the reason that people are a little hesitant, I think, on Minnesota is the international aspect. They just don't know about these players, and that is, for people that are familiar with the international game, they're very high on these players. You mentioned Rachel Galligan. I trust her with any decision she makes or has any insight on any international players, because she has lived that. She knows the ins and outs of that space. And she'll be probably somebody that would say this. I know Cheryl would say this. The entire Lynx front office and coaching staff will say this. These players are quality players, and they will make an impact. It'll probably be slow as you start getting adjusted to the WNBA style, physicality, all of that stuff. It might be a little bit of a ramp up for them, but I do think that they will play big roles, and they have the ability. It's kind of like a Seattle thing. They have a ability right away while Nafisa Collier is out to make an impact. And I think that they will. We'll see a lot of, different looks with this roster, which I think a lot of people are nervous about. But I do think that this season they will be all right. I'm not saying they'll be bad. I'm not saying they'll be a title contender. They'll be, I think, kind of average. But this sets up, not to jump too far ahead, but this sets up for an interesting next offseason, because you kind of cleared way now with the roster or the salaries that you would have spent if you would have re-signed the 5-6 players that ended up leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not strapped now for next offseason. Now you can be more aggressive next offseason, attracting more players. And, looking at, I know, and sorry I'm rambling here, but I know
please.
a lot of Lynx fans are saying, like, well, why didn't the Lynx just pay the players that ended up leaving? Why didn't they pay them that money? Okay, let's be a little bit more realistic, and let's look at the dollar figures. Justin Shepard got starter money in Dallas. The Lynx were not going to pay. She's not a starter, or she wouldn't have been a starter here. I'll be honest. Like, she wasn't going to get starter money in Minnesota. You replace her with, you could either say Nia Coffey or with Natasha Howard for cheaper. And they are potentially, Natasha Howard's going to start. Nia Coffey will play a big role off the bench. You have Dorky Uhas coming back over, who's cheaper, who could potentially end up being a starter. Her and Nia Coffey could maybe even, kind of maybe switch in and out of the starting lineup. Alana Smith, that one, I think that was her decision. I think Minnesota was willing to match whatever Dallas ended up offering, but I think she was ready to move on and get a fresh start and get something else. I think Unrivaled played a really big role in that, in her decision to leave and just the team that she did end up going to. But going back to what I'm tying this all together is Minnesota. They wanted to retain these players. Let's not mistake that. They wanted to retain those players, but they didn't, put their neck or stretch their necks out and pay these players and then be strapped for the next couple of years. Let's say next offseason, let's say they re-signed all the players that hypothetically that they lost this offseason, with the exception of Bridget Carlton and Kliandikova, who left in the expansion draft. Let's say hypothetically they re-signed all these players. Now, let's say they have a average year this year. Now you're sitting next offseason, you have an average team, and you have absolutely no cap space. What are you going to do? And I'm not saying that would have happened. They could have, they could have been a top 3 seed. Who knows? But at least now you're banking on potential. You're kind of doing I don't want to say a rebuild, but you're kind of taking a step back and then building some of that youth back up. And if it doesn't work out, you can turn the page and then you can go sign somebody next offseason. It's not, to me, it's not a bad situation to be in. And, oh, by the way, you still have Courtney Williams, Kayla McBride, and Nafisa Collier on your team. And that's pretty damn good. So I don't know. I know that, the shock of everything happening at once, and that's the kind of the beauty and the demise of having basically 1 week or basically like 3-day free agency. But that is what happens, is everything's going to happen at once. And I think a lot of people were just kind of shocked that, oh my God, what is Cheryl doing? And if it stretched out a month, it probably wouldn't have been as the world is ending. But that's just the reality of where we're at. And let's just say this: I know Cheryl has a plan B, C, D, E, F, G. Like she's thought of every single scenario. She thought of the scenario where all of those players left. I guarantee it. And we're seeing that plan, maybe plan D or something that is taking place right now.
Okay, so now, as we hinted to earlier, news broke today. Obviously, Skywave, Haley Van Lith, and then signed Natasha Cloud. Immediate thoughts, immediate reactions. I mean, mine are pretty basic. Like at face value, look, you made other moves this offseason, first round pick moves, to get JC Sheldon. You made picks last year. Look, I don't want to say ownership. Front office has made very clear that they are in win now. They somehow think they are in a window to win. I completely disagree with that. I don't know why they think that. I do look at the roster and sometimes go, oh, like, I see you making the playoffs, but you have some talent. But then I'm like, it fades off as I realize there's a whole season that goes on and like there's more to it. Haley Van Lith was a young player. Now, obviously, you had fourth-year option coming up soon, but you're paying a pretty penny for Natasha Cloud, and you already have two guards that literally this past week in a press conference, you had Courtney Vandersloot talking about how it's Skylar Diggins' team until Sloot comes back, and then it's Sloot and her are going to share the responsibility. So now are you going to like have a 3-piece pie or something with Natasha Cloud? You also have JC Sheldon. You have some other guards on this roster that don't necessarily typically play a point guard, lead guard position, but like, I'm just confused as to why make this move, because like the only way that it makes sense to me in the terms of like, it makes this team that much better. And this isn't shade to Natasha Cloud. I think she's a really good point guard in a specific role in a specific type of team. She can be another champion, but it has to be that specific type of team. I didn't think that was New York, and I definitely don't think it's here. Like, let's look at this roster. Where is she going? Azrae Stevens, Skylar, Dejanay Carrington, obviously hurt, Camila Cardoza, Rakia Jackson, Rachel Bannum, JC Sheldon,
They have about 43 guards, I think.
So I'm like, I get it. You're basically just going to throw Camilla out there with an Azrae out there with like a bunch of guards and just like, I don't know how to, whatever. Oh, yeah. What are your thoughts? Sorry.
No, I agree. It's very, I don't know. I say this without knowing their style of play. That's what's quoted or reported that's why they moved on from Haley Van Lith, which I don't get it. But anyway, I don't know their style of play. Maybe it's going to be a completely small ball style of play. It's looking at their roster, that's what it's going to have to be.
Yeah, but Haley Van Lith is small.
Well, that is true. That is true. But I mean, I'm just looking at their roster right now while I'm talking, and I don't know how they're gonna like. There's gonna have to be some cuts on some of these players that are big name players, and maybe not big name players, but well known players, because they're just way too guard heavy, and I don't know how they're gonna make all of that work and then make everybody happy or keep everybody happy at the same time. I was really surprised. One player that was in Minnesota last year with Dejanay Carrington, I was surprised that she went to Chicago. I'll be honest. I thought she was going to return to Minnesota. And part of that is because she would have, I think, gotten a bigger role in Minnesota. But to each their own. I mean, it's a unique offseason with money and just.
My take is her injury has something to do with that, where it was like, we would like to have you back, but then, oh, you're hurt. And Fee's hurt. Can we have two of our input? And honestly, like, hindsight makes it look even smarter again, very unintelligent outsider's perspective, because then Dorka gets hurt.
Yeah.
And now imagine if you have those 3 players, as how important that would be for this roster. Yeah. So, um, but to me, it's almost like you add Natasha Cloud to this roster, you gain another name, but
Yeah.
I don't, and so like in that sense, it's a better roster, but I don't understand how this helps the on-court product, where they're going to put them, how it's going to work. Um, I mean, props to them. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk some leap candidates. Any players you expect to take a leap, or want to take a leap? So a player I don't have a yes or no take on it, but I mentioned this earlier. Ryan Howard is a player that I want to see take a leap, and I feel like needs to take that next leap for Atlanta Dream's success. If the team wants to take that next step,
Mm-hmm.
as a franchise, getting into that contention. And then obviously, biasly, my redheads, who finally get roster spots, Pretchel and Chloe Bibby, at their respective teams, obviously going to have a huge leap this year. Any players in your mind?
I, and I'm a little kind of biased just with the team I primarily cover, that being Minnesota. I do think we're going to see a bigger year from Bridget Carlton. I think we're going to have to see a bigger year from her. When she was in Minnesota for 7 years, as we all know, she didn't have to be that player. She didn't have to be the player that stepped up, produced offensively. She did a lot of the little things, but
A
she was
lot.
kind of, yeah, she did. And a lot of the stuff that doesn't show up in a stat sheet or really doesn't go noticed. She was that glue player. But we haven't seen her have to step up offensively and kind of take on that offensive role and the leadership role. She's getting all of that in Portland. And I do think that she'll do well. I don't know if we're gonna, if it's gonna be, you know, most improved player quality or maybe I don't even know, maybe all-star. I would think if she's, the top player on that team, she would get an all-star nod, but I don't know. I don't know exactly to what extent, but I do think that she will improve, and she's going to get thrown into the fire, no pun intended, to do that this year. I do also think, looking over, and once again, I'm going to go back to a former Minnesota player, but I do think we're going to see a nice year from Jessica Shepard this year. Just with her too, with the expansion or expanded role in Dallas, and just kind of having that ability to take games over. I think one thing with Alana Smith too, and those two being paired together, is Alana Smith is okay with letting somebody else do that. She's okay with deferring to other people, and she'll have to do that in Dallas with Enrique and Paige. But I do think that Jessica Shepard will have a nice year this year, and she's been. I mean, this has been her whole career in the making. It's she's that dirty, or not dirty player, but she'll do the dirty work.
Yeah.
What I meant to say. And she's a do it all type of player. And I think that she'll do great in Dallas. But for me, those are two players initially, and like I said, I'm a little biased because I was closer to those players last year with covering the Lynx, but I do think they're going to have some big opportunities this year. I also do think, looking specifically at the Lynx, I do think Dorka Juhas is going to have a nice year this year. I think the year off last year, it's going to be a similar situation to me as Jess Shepard from the year prior. Jessica Shepard took off for WNBA season, came back last year and looked incredible. I do think we're going to see a similar thing to Dorka Juhas once she gets healthy and once she's ready to go. But I expect a big year from her too.
Totally. All right, moving on now. Last two things. Rookies to immediately watch. Now, we can talk. Everyone knows Awa's going to be amazing down the road. Everyone knows some of these players are going to be amazing down the road. We talked about already some of these rookies from overseas that maybe aren't getting as much attention. Everyone pay attention to Frida Buna over in Portland. Sorry, there's so many teams now. It takes me a little bit more time to connect where everyone is in my mind database. But we're talking about players who are in positions to contribute right away. And Lauren Betts in DC, I think, will have success when she can get on the court. That's a busy front court. The player that I'm going, maybe hot take, maybe not hot take. I think it's maybe a little less of a hot take because I saw some other people had it also after I formulated it. I'm not copying opinions here. Flage for Rookie of the Year. I think she's going to end up getting a lot of opportunity to play a very big role in Seattle. And with that front court that she has, I think she will find a good amount of success because of the polarization of those players. Because I look around, and some of these other players, I don't think necessarily like are going to be putting up the flashy, gaudy, eye-popping stats to necessarily pull the attention for a Rookie of the Year award. You don't need to go Rookie of the Year, but any rookies that you think will have an immediate impact.
I do think Flage is going to have a good year. I'm really, well, I mean, you as far as player that'll make an immediate impact, I think Olivia Miles is going to have a really nice start to the year, a really nice year. Maybe not start to the year, but really nice year. You already mentioned Lauren Betts. AZ Fudd, I mean, she's number one pick. She's going to make an impact. That's a given. But looking a little bit farther down, you mentioned Flauge. I do agree with that. I really like Raven Johnson in Indiana. I think she's going to have a good year. I think it'll be it's kind of like a lot of these players. It's going to be a slower start, and then I think she's really going to find her footing. You could say the same thing with Kiki Rice too. I think she'll have a solid year, and she's going to get
Kiki will,
plenty of opportunity. But I would say that those two are, for me, the two that I'm really looking at. I really like Flage Johnson too. I like her fire. I like her game. I just like everything about her, and I wish she was in Minnesota because she'd be a hell of a lot of fun to cover. But Olivia Miles was pretty decent too. But I would say that those two are probably two that I think are gonna that are gonna, maybe, I don't want to say surprise people, but maybe kind of maybe raise some eyebrows throughout the year. The top two of that being AZ Fudd and Olivia Miles, they're top picks for a reason. I think that comes with expectations that you're just going to perform right away. We will see that from them. But I do think there's some difference makers farther down in the first round too.
Totally. Give Neepkin some love. Okay, opening weekend is here. Must-watch games this weekend. I'll tell you, as I'm looking at it, we got Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're not counting Tuesday. Just counting Friday, Saturday, Sunday. All right? Obviously, look, can I be real for a moment that I'm a little bit disappointed with opening night? We got the Sun versus the Liberty. Easy win for New York. Mystics tempo. Mystics are running with that one. Sorry. We didn't even plan on doing this. I'm just doing it. Valkyries Storm. Now that's a fun one.
Could be a good one.
That one will be a good one. That'll be the game of the night. I'm not ready to pick a winner on that one yet, so Mitchell, pick one.
Hold on one second. I just got to go back to New York and Connecticut. New York is 17.5-point favorites. Whew. All right. Well, anyway, for Golden State, Seattle, I'm gonna go Seattle. I'm gonna go Seattle. Okay. They're playing at home. It's a tough place to play. I think Seattle will come out. I'm gonna also predict Flage Johnson will have 12 points. Okay. And Natisha Heidemann will have 20.
Oh, okay.
Shoot 20 or more. She won't get her.
All right, fair. All right.
That's my prediction.
Okay, cool. Love it. Then we got Saturday. Obviously, game of the weekend. Dallas Wings, Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers. But honestly, beyond that, the reason for me that it's the game of the weekend is more so because everything we talked about in this episode when we come to power ranking where we view these teams. As we look around this opening weekend, we also have Mercury Aces finals rematch. It was a sweep. So okay. And the Mercury roster looks worse and the Aces roster looks better. Sky Portland. I think that's a game that's honestly, for whatever reason, on my list of games watched this weekend. For me this weekend, it's Wings Fever, Sky Portland. Obviously, I'm watching Minnesota, Atlanta. I think that will be an interesting one. But those two games, Minnesota, Atlanta, and Wings Fever, as games of playoff teams that we kind of want to see where they are in our early season expectations. Very high on that. And then I'm going Wings beat the Fever, which is a ridiculous. I'm just going with it. I think the Wings really start off hot and then taper out. Aces Mercury, Dream beat the Lynx probably. Sky Portland. Sky are gonna win somehow. Do you want to pick that one?
Oh,
If you disagree, tell me, please.
No, I don't. I don't know who I'd pick in that. Oh, I'd probably say Sky.
It's just having the experience. I feel like even having some continuity is a leg up on a first game of the season. Then we got Sunday Storm starting up the season 2-0 maybe. Okay. Liberty Mystics, Liberty, Aces Sparks. Maybe that will end up being a good game. We'll see. I don't think the Sparks will just give up. And last year, if I remember correctly, the Sparks really gave the Aces a run for their money. Maybe I'm completely off on that. Somebody correct me in the comments.
So back-to-back.
And then
Aces.
Yeah, and then Mercury against the Valkyrie. Honestly, great for the Aces to get their back-to-backs and stuff early in the season. Mercury Valkyrie, I think, actually could be a really fun, interesting game. I got the Valkyrie in that one. Anything else from that weekend? So yeah, for the games that I think are must watch, Wings Fever, obviously Sunday's like Valkyrie Storm opening night game you gotta watch. That's the game of the night. Saturday, Wings Fever, you gotta watch that. Or if you're more into the finals rematch, you got that too. And then pick one game Sunday that fans gotta watch.
Sunday.
One day only.
Yeah. I just got to say before I pick, the tickets are as low as $9 for the Connecticut Seattle game.
Connecticut tickets are it's like they're doing prices from back when the team was founded.
That's $9. That is insane. That's great.
Yeah.
But
No, it's amazing. I thought I saw a $13 ticket to their preseason game.
Wow. Goodness. Okay, that's like 2 gallons of gas. Actually. Anyway. God, for Sunday. I do think the Aces Sparks game is probably the game that I think will be the best. But the Aces are on a back-to-back, but then again, it's in LA. It's Las Vegas to LA. But I would say that one's probably the best one, with the runner-up and one that's probably 1A, 1B. It would be Phoenix Golden State. I think that's going to be a solid game as well.
Awesome. Appreciate you as always. And to end this episode, it's WNBA 30. Thank you for listening and supporting independent WNBA coverage. We've been doing this a while, not 30 years, but a while. And it only works because of this community. So thank you.